Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Campbell's Coins. I didn't really want to make this video. I like to keep things fun, informative, but unfortunately, due to the times that we are currently living in, I don't really see any other way around this. I think that we should really start preparing for an economic worldwide depression. And one of those ways that you can prepare for one of these depressions or recessions is purchasing and holding gold and silver. Now, I've been telling my family for well over a year that this economic depression is coming. I have like messages and everything like 2020 is the year this is gonna happen, and we're here. And some have listened, some haven't, and you know, that's on them. But the point of the matter is I try to get the word out to people like, I think you need to do this, and you can either take my words as advice and heed them, or ignore them. I don't really care either way, but at least I got the message out there that I think this is really important. However, I realized that I could not advocate for stacking gold and silver without diving into and showing you the real reasons why you need to stack gold and silver. So per usual, I'm going to go into a lengthy diatribe, eventually circling around to my point. But trust me, all the information I'm going to give you, I feel is very important and necessary. And if you don't like it, deal with it. The information in this episode has been carefully compiled from sources believed to be reliable, but the accuracy of the information is not guaranteed. I am not a licensed financial analyst. I'm a precious metal strategist. This episode is not intended as investment advice. The opinions expressed are mine. I cannot guarantee any silver or gold products you purchase will rise in value. You should be aware that prices will fluctuate and may go down as well as up. Strategies mentioned in this episode may not be suitable for you. Past performance is not an indication of future profits. The decision as to how much to allocate is strictly up to you and/or your financial advisor. COVID-19 has had a ripple effect throughout the world, throughout the economy. Our stock market dropped almost 30% in just a week. People are working from home, people are out of job, and there really doesn't seem to be an end in sight. Recently, our government passed a $2 trillion stimulus bill, and it was designed to help out people and businesses who are not working, who can't pay bills. That's very interesting because out of that $2 trillion, only $850 billion is going to you, the people.
And we give it back to you, the people.
The rest of the $1.5 trillion is going to corporations and special interest groups. So the majority of the money from a bill designed to help people isn't going to the people, it's going to special interest groups. It's a little funny. We've seen this kind of bailout before with Obama, but this is entirely different, and I'll go into why. The Federal Reserve has announced unlimited QE. Now, what is QE? QE is quantitative easing. What is quantitative easing? It's money printing. The government, those in power, will do everything that they can to not call something what it is, because as soon as they do, as soon as they call it what it really is, the game is up. People understand what's going on. But if they can conceal it behind things that people don't understand, if they can make it more convoluted than what it really is, people just glaze over and ignore it. Once the population knows what's going on, they wouldn't allow it. Or at least that's what I'd like to think. So they disguise it under a different name to confuse and mislead you. If the Federal Reserve can print unlimited money, what is its true value? The coronavirus is not to blame for the economic collapse that we are currently seeing. I know a lot of people argue about that, but just hear me out. The economy would have collapsed eventually, even if this coronavirus didn't happen. Let's look at the quantitative easings that have taken place since 2008. I'm going to use this Ziploc bag filled with water to represent the US economy. I have US economy written on the bag. We have a tiny pinprick. We're leaking water. This is the mortgage crisis of 2008. Now the Fed decided, oh, we're gonna fix that with quantitative easing. And this quantitative easing is represented by the duct tape. So you just duct tape over that and, oh, looks like everything's good, except it's not. Every time they add quantitative easing into the economy, it makes the next crisis or the next event even worse. So now we're leaking more. First QE was in November of 2008, was for the mortgage crisis and was over $1 trillion. They threw a lot of money at that problem, but it didn't stop it. And so they had to keep adding more and more money to it. And as you can see, we've got more holes. So, quantitative easing number 2. And they patch it up, but we're still not good. Quantitative easing number 2 was in 2010 and was bond buybacks. It was $600 billion injected into the bond market to keep that afloat. Now, as you can see, even though these are taped, these little pinholes are taped up, we're still leaking. In September of 2012, the Fed announced QE3, spending nearly $400 billion per month. This was increased to $85 billion a month until December 2013, where it was scaled back to just $10 billion a month, and that lasted all the way through 2014. QE4 started in 2019 with the repro markets. So we've got all these holes, and it just gets worse and worse and worse every time we add more quantitative easing. But they threw money at it. And now we're all patched up, but we're still leaking. They can patch it up all they want, but it's still going to leak. I'm really sorry if that demonstration turned out poorly. Basically what I was saying is in order to fix the economy, the government started using quantitative easing in 2008. At first it was QE1 in November 2008, and it was over $1 trillion. In 2010, they did another $600 billion in bond buybacks, and they called it Quantitative Easing 2. In September 2012, the Fed announced QE3, spending nearly $400 billion per month in mortgage-backed securities. This was increased to $85 billion per month until December 2013, where it was tapered back down to $10 billion a month until October 2014. And now we have a $2 trillion stimulus. All this money injected is designed to keep the economy propped up. Before 2008, the United States never participated in quantitative easing. This is just money printing. If they can create this $1 bill at a whim, what is its true value? If the economy was so strong, it wouldn't need any quantitative easings. By the way, when you or I print money, it's illegal. When the Federal Reserve prints money, it's okay. Would it change your mind on the legality of money printing if you learn the Federal Reserve is a private organization? That's right, the Federal Reserve isn't a government entity, it's a private business. One created in a secret meeting on Jekyll Island off the coast of Georgia in 1910. A meeting its 6 members never admitted actually happened until the 1930s. A business officially created when Woodrow Wilson signed the Federal Reserve Act on December 23rd, 1913. Yep, that's right. Passed a day before Christmas Eve when no one would notice because they are with their family. Remember what I said about quantitative easing? How they call something by another name so it fools you? This is exactly what they did with the Federal Reserve. It's not federal, and it's not a reserve. They print money, like this $100 bill. They can print this $100 bill at a cost of 14.2 cents each. They then sell this $100 bill to the United States for $100 plus interest. That's a pretty nice profit. I know what you're thinking. What? There's no interest in my currency. What do you think your income tax pays? Income tax did not exist prior to the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913. But we will get into the fraud that is the Federal Reserve in another video. And speaking of money printing, let's talk about the game Monopoly. Did you ever play Monopoly? Maybe you know about Rule 11. Rule 11 of Monopoly states, what if the bank runs out of money? Some people think the bank is bankrupt if it runs out of money. The bank never goes bankrupt. To continue playing, use slips of paper to keep track of each player's banking transactions until the bank has enough paper money to operate again. The bank may also issue new money on slips of ordinary paper. How is that not exactly what's going on right now? Does this sound familiar to you at all? Do you want to know why I use Monopoly money when I discuss fiat? Because it is no different than this. And this isn't regular Monopoly money, this is Star Wars Monopoly money. You can thank my family for that. We give this $1 perceived value and we say this is paper. Both are paper, both can be printed to infinity, and both are backed by absolutely nothing. Gold and silver, on the other hand, are entirely different. It costs money to dig these metals out of the earth, and there is a finite amount of each in existence. Now we are getting to the meat and potatoes of the topic, inflation. It comes from money printing. It's happened many times across the world, and yet we as a species still manage to run into this problem. Inflation is the rising price on goods, services, well, basically everything, to match the money supply. What does gold and silver do with failing economies and inflation? Both these metals are a hedge against inflation, and both preserve your wealth when the economy collapses. During the hyperinflation event in Weimar, Germany in the early 1920s, 20 ounces of gold could buy you an entire city block. Imagine buying a New York City block for just 20 ounces of gold. One can purchase an ounce of gold now for $16.50. 20 ounces of gold in terms of money today is only $34,000. $34,000 for an entire city block? And Weimar, Germany in the 1920s had so much cash that people were leaving it in the streets. They were using it as wallpaper. They were burning it to keep warm. Does this seem improbable to you? Well, we currently have examples of hyperinflation to use. Venezuela's socialist system ushered in hyperinflation. An ounce of gold can buy one a house. An ounce of silver can buy food for 6 months. Don't think hyperinflation will happen here. Think about your own personal experiences. It's been happening your entire life. Is your cost of living cheaper now or when it was 10 years ago? Education, insurance, food, housing, cars, all up drastically since 1998, and up even more since 2008. Food can be deceiving because the price remains relatively the same, but the packaging gets a whole lot smaller. What about schooling? When I started college in 2003 at a California university, I was paying $1,800 per quarter for tuition. When I left that school, my per quarter tuition was over $3,000. Middle-class families used to be able to afford a home in a decent neighborhood, have nice cars, and still have a savings from one single wage earner. I'm not talking about $1 million salary, of course. Middle-class earnings from the 1940s through the 1980s could get you these things. Now it takes you 2 middle-class wage earners to get close to this, and in reality, it's a whole lot less than you could get 30 years ago. Your cost of living has been creeping up higher and higher your entire life. And you don't see it unless you take a snapshot comparing one decade to another. In 2008, before all the quantitative easing and Obamacare, the US debt, the total US debt, was $8 trillion. Obama doubled the total debt by the time he left office to $16 trillion. And Trump has added $8 trillion in just 4 years. On track to double Obama's if he stays in office for another 4 years. The US currently has $24 trillion of debt, in addition to the announcement of unlimited money printing by the Fed. If you haven't looked, take a look at our national debt. It seems to double every 8 years, at least since the 1980s. And we are reaching that point where it will soon become exponential. If that doesn't scare you, it really should. Is it too late to buy gold and silver? Hell no. You can still find gold and silver out there, but you will be paying a higher premium than you would normally. But you can definitely find them. I recommend purchasing from really well-known places. I don't recommend purchasing off of eBay or off of people from Craigslist. Find places that know and test the metals, because there's a lot of folks out there right now that are taking advantage of this exceptionally high demand for gold and silver, and they're pumping fakes into the market. And they will put it at a seemingly good price because that'll get people to buy it without really thinking. They're just going in there and grabbing. I don't recommend purchasing gold and silver stocks. My motto is, if you don't hold it, you don't own it. If you want to own mining stocks, that's another story, and I still wouldn't recommend it at this point. The demand for gold and silver will only increase. It's now, I think it's April 3rd. Silver mines have shut down due to the COVID-19 virus. Silver mines are refusing to sell their supply to the COMEX, and supplies are dwindling all over the United States and the world. Mints in the United States, mints all over the world. Government mints have shut down, not only because of this virus, but because they ran out of metal to mint. Supplies will dry up, and when they dry up, the price on these metals will skyrocket. I'm certainly glad I have purchased gold and silver, and I hope you can get some too before it is too late. Thank you all so much for watching Campbell's Coins, and that is my 2 cents.